If you are working past the age of 65, there are 7 expensive Medicare mistakes that you need to avoid at all costs. Even one of these mistakes can cost you thousands of dollars, or it can leave you with lifetime penalties, and that's so unfortunate. I have seen so many smart people accidentally make one of these mistakes, and unfortunately it happens every day, just because they don't know the rules. That's why in this video, I'm going to show you these big mistakes and then show you how to avoid them. The first mistake is not enrolling in Medicare at the right time. You may think that because you have health insurance from your job or from your spouse's job, you can delay Medicare until you retire, but actually that's not always true. You should only delay your Medicare if you work for a large company with more than 20 employees. Because the rules are that after you turn 65, if your employer has 20 or more employees, then your work insurance stays your primary insurance. But if your employer has 19 or fewer employees, Medicare must become your primary coverage. Medicare gives a break to small groups. So here's what it means for you. When you turn 65, if you have small group insurance, Medicare is your primary, your work is your secondary, and if you haven't enrolled in Medicare, then you essentially become the primary, and you have to pay the portion that Medicare would pay. And that's the kicker. It can leave you with massive medical bills because you're responsible to pay the part that Medicare was supposed to pay. And in addition to that, you can also get lifetime penalties because you didn't enroll in Medicare by the end of your enrollment period, and now you're accruing a penalty. So if you're working for a small company, what should you do? Well, the big thing that you need to do here is you need to sign up for Medicare during your initial enrollment period. That's the 7-month window that is 3 months before your birthday, the month of your birthday, and 3 months after your birthday. If you miss your enrollment period, they're going to add an additional 10% to your Medicare Part B premium for every year that you delayed. That's why it's really critical that if you're in a small company, you enroll in Medicare when you're eligible, and you only delay your Medicare if you're working for a company that has 20 or more employees. Now, there doesn't necessarily need to be 20 employees enrolled in health insurance from your company to avoid this issue. There just has to be at least 20 employees working at the company. You might be the only one that's on the insurance, but if there's 20 employees or more at the company, then you're not required to take Medicare because that's considered a larger group. So if you're with a larger employer and you're keeping your group plan, you get an 8-month special enrollment period that starts once you retire or once you lose coverage, and during that time, you can enroll in Medicare without incurring any penalties. Just make sure that you submit the form CMS-L564. We call it the L564. You take it to your HR department and they fill out their part and confirm your coverage. And then you need to fill out the CMS 40B, which tells CMS when you want your Medicare coverage to begin. Another big mistake is keeping your Affordable Care Act Obamacare plan instead of switching to Medicare. I know that this can be tempting because the Affordable Care Act plan, it maybe you're getting a tax subsidy where it's paying part of your premium or the cost is really low. But once you turn 65, you have to sign up for Medicare. Because if you're eligible for Medicare and you're on an Affordable Care Act plan, maybe you're only paying $100 a month, but that plan actually costs $800 a month and you're getting a subsidy to cover the difference. Once you're eligible for Medicare, you no longer qualify for a subsidy, but the plan may continue to be lowered, and then at the end of the year, you're going to receive a statement that says, hey, you weren't eligible for all the money that we paid for you, and now you have to pay it all back. That could be thousands of dollars. So make sure if you're on Affordable Care Act plan that when you're eligible for Medicare, you enroll. And if you're not sure about the cost, the good news is that Medicare has a website where you can go and check and make sure that your insurance is actually going to take care of all the bills or how much to expect from Medicare. I'll leave a link to that in the description below so you can check that out for yourself. Another big mistake that people who are working at the age of 65 often make is that they don't compare whether Medicare or their employer plan is going to be better for them. A lot of people just assume that their employer plan is better, while others assume that Medicare is going to always be better. Well, newsflash, either one of them can be better. It just depends. There's so many variables here. That's why before deciding, there are 5 things that you need to look at before you make your choice of staying with your group plan or going with a Medicare plan. Number 1, does your spouse need coverage or a dependent? Because dependents can be covered up to 26. So Medicare will cover you and only you, not your spouse, not your children. And if your employer is covering your family, then that might be the big decision maker. Number 2, compare the premiums and cost. What comes out of your paycheck every month versus what would come out with Medicare? If you're paying more than, say, $100, $200 a month for your employer plan, then maybe you should consider Medicare. Number 3, compare copays and deductibles. There can be differences here that can add up fast. Your employer plan might be really affordable on the monthly basis, but could have a massive $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 deductible where you could go to Medicare and avoid that entirely. Number 4, compare your out-of-pocket maximums. This is your financial safety net. And the safety net on a group plan is probably not as good as the safety net on something like a Medicare Advantage plan. But again, it depends on your area. Lower is better. So you want to determine, in the scenario where I actually use my insurance, how expensive will it be to stay on my group plan versus have a Medicare plan. And finally, number 5, compare your prescription costs. The medications that you need might be covered differently, and they might be more affordable on your group plan, or they might be more affordable on Medicare. You really need to look at that and see which one is going to give you the best prescription coverage. Now remember, don't just compare your employer plan to basic, traditional, or original Medicare, because Medicare isn't a single plan. You have multiple options. You need to compare your group plan against having original Medicare with a Medicare supplement with a prescription drug plan, or you need to compare your group plan against having a Medicare Advantage plan that covers all of those things in Medicare. And those are the 2 main routes that you can take with Medicare, Medicare Supplement or Medicare Advantage. I've made many videos on that. I'll leave some links for you below, but you need to understand the difference between those 2, and you need to compare your group plan to both of those options, both of those paths. Okay, the next big mistake is a surprising one. It's that people ask themselves, why do I have to choose between my current plan and Medicare? Why don't I just have both? Well, we live in a free country, so you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to tell you that that's not a good idea, because most of the time they don't work together, and you end up paying for 2 things without any extra benefit. The base premium for Medicare Part B is $185 a month. Not only that, but Medicare and your employer coverage, they don't always help each other out. In fact, most of the time they don't. So think of it like paying for 2 car insurance policies when you only have 1 car. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Many people who choose to keep their employer health plan also enroll in Medicare Part A only. As a reminder, original Medicare has Medicare Part A and Medicare Part B. Medicare Part A is hospitalization, inpatient hospitalization insurance, and Medicare Part B is your medical insurance for when you visit the doctor or have a procedure, etc. The vast majority of people don't have to pay monthly or don't have to pay a premium for Medicare Part A because they paid for that while they were working. You know, when you're working, you see that money coming out of your paycheck, that is paying for Medicare Part A, which is why it doesn't hurt you to have Medicare Part A. It can also prove to be helpful if you're admitted to the hospital. However, Medicare Part B, the medical side of Medicare, Medicare Part B is not going to help you if you're enrolled in employer coverage. So for the vast majority of people who determine that the group plan is the way to go and that they stay with their group plan, those people typically enroll in Medicare Part A and they skip Medicare Part B, which you have to talk to Social Security and arrange that. It doesn't happen automatically, but you could skip Medicare Part B and wait to enroll in B until your employer health plan is ending. The next mistake is when you automatically get enrolled in Medicare without realizing it. Typically, this only happens if you've already enrolled in Social Security and you're receiving Social Security and you did that 4 months before you turn 65. So a lot of people enroll when they're younger, 63 years old, they enroll in Social 62, they enroll in Social Security, and now when they turn 65, they will automatically be enrolled in Medicare Parts A and B. Now this can be great for people who need Medicare and they don't have to worry about enrolling in Medicare. However, for people who are going to delay their enrollment, it can be a problem because, again, Medicare Part B's premium is $185 a month. But don't worry, you can cancel this automatic enrollment if that's what happens to you. Now, when Medicare first sends you an enrollment packet, they will do this about 3 months before you turn 65. You will find that there is an opportunity to refuse Medicare inside. The form allows you to cancel your enrollment, and you could cancel your B only, or you could cancel both your A and B. You simply check the box on which one that you want to opt out of, sign the form, and mail it back. Now, if you don't want to do it that way, or you don't want to send it in the mail, or you're concerned, you can also contact Social Security at 1-800-772-1213, and you can cancel with them, or you can visit your local Social Security office and do the same thing. Now, remember when I said that many people choose to enroll in Medicare Part A only while keeping their employer coverage? Well, if you have a health savings account, you need to stop contributing to it before you enroll in Medicare Part A. Because if you continue to make HSA contributions when you're enrolled in Part A, then you'll get tax penalties on your contributions. So if you have an HSA and you're going to keep it, then don't enroll in Medicare Part A, don't enroll in Medicare Part B, because you want to continue to have contributions made to your HSA. Now, here's another strange rule. When you do eventually decide to enroll in Medicare, you need to stop contributing to your HSA at least 6 months before you enroll. Why? Because if you enroll past the age of 65, your Medicare Part A coverage will have a 6-month retroactive coverage. And any HSA contributions you made in that 6-month period will be subject to tax penalty. It's wild, isn't it? So the magic rule here is to stop contributing to your HSA at least 6 months before you enroll in Medicare if you're enrolling past the age of 65. Hey, before I do the last mistake, let me just jump in here and say that if you're finding this video helpful, please like it and give us the thumbs up. That helps support the channel. And do consider subscribing because we're putting out a lot of good Medicare videos that are simple, easy to understand, and hopefully can help you make a good choice with your Medicare. The last mistake that we unfortunately see people make is they are working past 65 or they have some insurance that they're keeping past 65. And the prescription drug plan in that coverage doesn't count towards Medicare. So you already know that if your company has 20 or more employees, you could delay your Medicare and you could stay with that plan. But what you may not realize is that company has to have a prescription drug plan that is equal to or better than Medicare, or else you can get a penalty for prescription drug plans on Medicare also. It's called a Part D penalty. Part D is the part of Medicare that covers prescriptions. And if your coverage that you kept instead of going onto Medicare Part D plan is not sufficient, you will also get a penalty for Part D. So you could have a penalty for Part B and a penalty for Part D. So we call it creditable drug coverage. Creditable drug coverage simply means that the coverage is equal to or better than Medicare Part D. And if you're not sure, you can always ask your HR department if your prescription drug plan is considered Medicare creditable coverage. Also, Medicare has a full PDF on how Medicare Part D works, which includes how it interacts with other prescription drug plans. In addition to that, every year at the end of the year, you receive a notice from your health plan and your employer that says, this year our prescription drug plan is creditable with Medicare. You need to make sure that that is the case. And if you're still on the fence about whether or not you should delay enrolling in Medicare or not, then check out this video over here where I go over some of the reasons why you may want to delay your Medicare.